Her friends laughed. The air in the room thickened, heavy with a scent of jasmine perfume and the faint burn of whiskey on my tongue. I stood frozen, the divorce papers clutched in my hand, their edges crumpling under my tightening grip. Across the table, Elise's laughter sliced through the chatter of her friends, sharp and carefree, as she tossed her head back and declared, "I want a divorce." Her words hung there, glittering like broken glass under candlelight. Her friends erupted into giggles, assuming it was a jest, their wine glasses clinking in mockery. But I didn't laugh. My smirk was cold, deliberate, as I slid the signed papers across the polished mahogany, watching her face shift from mirth to ash. The dining room glowed with a kind of warmth that only wealth could manufacture, golden chandelier light spilling over silk drapes, the clatter of fine china, the hum of conversation that felt rehearsed. Elise's friends, draped in designer dresses, were a chorus of performative delight, their voices rising and falling like a scripted symphony. I'd always hated these gatherings, but Elise thrived in them, her charm a spotlight that left me in the shadows. Tonight, though, I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. I'd found the first clue 3 months ago, a text on her phone, glowing in the dark of our bedroom while she slept. Meet me at the usual place. Miss you. The sender's name was a single letter. J. My stomach had twisted, but I'd swallowed the bile, telling myself it was nothing. A friend, a colleague, a misunderstanding. Elise was radiant, untouchable. Why would she stray? I'd buried the doubt, but it grew roots, curling into every quiet moment. Now, as her friend's laughter faded into awkward coughs, Elise's eyes locked onto the papers. Her fingers, manicured and steady, hesitated above the table. "What's this?" she asked, her voice a fragile thread, barely holding. "You said you wanted a divorce," I replied, my tone even, though my chest burned. "I thought I'd make it easy." Her friend Margot, all sharp cheekbones and sharper tongue, leaned forward, her lips curling. "Oh, come on, Daniel, don't be dramatic." She was joking. Was she? I didn't look at Margot. My eyes stayed on Elise, watching the color drain from her face, her lips parting as if to speak, but finding no words. The room felt smaller, the air pressing against my skin like damp wool. The signs had been there, hadn't they? The late nights at the office, her phone angled just out of my view, the way her laughter felt like a performance when we were alone. I'd rationalize it all. Her job as a PR consultant demanded long hours. Her phone was a lifeline. Her distance was just stress. But then there was a scarf I'd found in her car, silk and emerald green, a brand she'd never worn. It smelled of cedar and musk, a scent that wasn't haze. I'd held it for hours one night, sitting in the dark, my mind spinning stories I didn't want to believe. "Daniel," Elise said now, her voice low, almost pleading. "This isn't the place." "Then where is?" I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking under my weight. "You've had plenty of chances to talk. At home, alone, but you're always so busy." Her friends exchanged glances, their discomfort a tangible thing, like static in the air. The clink of a fork against a plate sounded too loud, too final. Elise's hand trembled as she reached for the papers, her eyes scanning the words as if they were a foreign language. I wondered if she saw her own betrayal reflected in the ink. The weeks leading up to this moment had been a slow unraveling. I'd started noticing the way she avoided my touch, her fingers slipping from mine like water. I'd heard her whispering on the phone in the bathroom. The door cracked just enough for her voice to carry. "Not now," she'd hissed once, and I'd stood outside, my heart pounding, telling myself it was work, always work. But doubt is a parasite. It feeds on silence, grows in the spaces where trust frays. I'd hired a private investigator 2 weeks ago, hating myself for it. The report came in a manila envelope, delivered to my office like a bomb. Photos of Elise and a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile that made my fists clench, entering a hotel together. Receipts for dinners I hadn't shared. A hotel keycard tucked into a post, one I'd found and returned, pretending I hadn't seen it. Each piece was a shard, cutting deeper, until I couldn't breathe without feeling the wound. Now, in the dining room, Elise's eyes met mine, and I saw it, guilt, raw and unguarded, flickering like a candle about to gut out. "Daniel, please," she whispered. Let's go outside. No, my voice was steel, though inside I was fracturing. You wanted this public. You said it in front of them. I gestured to her friends, who sat rigid, their eyes darting between us like spectators at a car crash. So let's do this, hey? The memory of our early years haunted me as I watched her. We'd been reckless then, drunk on love, stealing kisses in the rain, promising forever in a world that felt unbreakable. But forever is a fragile thing, built on trust that can crumble with a single lie. I'd loved her fiercely, blindly, and maybe that was my mistake. I'd seen her as flawless, not human. Humans betray. Humans break. Daniel, she said again, her voice cracking. You don't understand. Then explain it. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table, the divorce papers between us like a line drawn in sand. Tell me about the late nights, the texts, the man you'd been meeting at the Meridian Hotel. Her gasp was audible, a sharp intake of breath that silenced the room. Margot's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Another friend, Clara, coughed, her napkin crumpling in her fist. Elise's face was a mask of panic, her eyes wide, searching for an escape that didn't exist. She started, then stopped, her hands twisting in her lap. It's not what you think. Then what is it? My voice rose, sharp enough to cut through the haze of her excuses. Because I've seen the photos, Elise. I've seen you with him, smiling, touching him, like you used to touch me. The room was a vacuum, every sound sucked away except the pounding of my pulse in my ears. Her friends stayed, their earlier laughter replaced by a suffocating silence. I wanted to scream, to shatter the perfect facade of this evening, but I held myself still, waiting for her to fill the void. She didn't deny it. That was the worst part. No tears, no apologies, just a quiet resignation that carved out my chest. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a mistake, a moment. A moment. I laughed, bitter and hollow. 3 months isn't a moment, Elise. It's a choice. Every time you left our bed to go to him, you chose. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She was too composed, too practiced, even now. I was lonely, she said, and the words were a knife, twisting. You were always working, always distant. I felt like I was disappearing. So you found someone else to see you. My voice broke, betraying the anger I'd tried to cage. You could have talked to me. You could have fought for us. I tried, she said, but it sounded hollow, like a line she'd rehearsed but didn't believe. Her friends were statues, their eyes fixed on the table, unwilling to meet mine. I wondered if they'd known, if they'd laughed behind my back, too. The divorce papers sat untouched, a silent accusation. I'd signed them last night, after the investigator's final report, after I'd sat in our empty house and realized I couldn't live with the ghost of her betrayal. But now, watching her, I felt a flicker of doubt. Not love, not anymore, but something heavier, grief for what we'd lost, for the life I'd thought we'd have. Take them, I said, pushing the papers closer. Oh, don't, but I'm done waiting for you to choose me. Elise reached for the papers, her fingers trembling, but she didn't pick them up. Instead, she stood, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor, and walked out of the room. The front door clicked shut behind her, a sound as final as a gunshot. Her friends avoided my gaze, their discomfort a living thing, crawling across the table. I stood, my legs unsteady, and followed her out, not because I wanted her back, but because I needed to see her face one last time. Outside, the night was cold, the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Elise stood by her car, her silhouette fragile against the darkness. I'm sorry, she said when she saw me, her voice breaking at last. I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to believe her, but the truth was a weight I couldn't carry anymore. You did, I said, and turned away, leaving her in the shadows where she'd left me long ago. But as I walked back to the house, a folded note slipped from my pocket, one I hadn't noticed before. It was her handwriting, tucked into my coat by someone, maybe, or one of her friends. I unfolded it under a streetlight, my breath catching as I read. It wasn't just me, Check your own phone, Daniel. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages I'd ignored, buried under work and denial. A name I hadn't thought of in years. A message I'd sent in a moment of weakness. A secret I'd thought was buried. The night closing, and I realized the betrayal wasn't just Hayes. It was ours.